Good evening. We'd like to get started with the first of our forums. We have two this evening. We have the first one for City Commission, and then we'll have a short break, and then the second one will be for School Board. So if we can ask everyone to take a seat, we'll go ahead and get started with our first of the forums for this evening. Good evening and welcome to the Candidates Forum featuring candidates for the Mount Pleasant City Commission. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Mount Pleasant area. I am Ruth Helwig, a member of the League and an impartial moderator. The League of Women Voters is a national, nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to promote informed and active participation in government. The League never supports nor opposes candidates or political parties. Our goal this evening is to acquaint you with the candidates for the Mount Pleasant City Commission. The City Commission consists of 7 citizens elected at large for staggered 3-year terms. Candidates must reside within the city limits. Duties and responsibilities are set forth in the city charter. There are 3 seats to be filled in this election. 5 candidates were to be here. We're missing some, so we have 3 candidates here this evening. And the candidates will introduce themselves, give a 1-minute opening statement, and answer questions. We ask that you write any questions that you have on the 3x5 cards, hand them to a League member, and then those will be vetted by our League members to make sure that they are appropriate for this particular forum. Questions should be brief, to the point, and we will try to avoid duplication and assure that they are relevant. I'd like to remind you that we are here to address the issues. Candidates will then have 90 seconds to respond to each question, and they are allowed 45 seconds for a rebuttal to an opponent's response. The candidates will also have 1 minute for a closing statement. So we will begin this evening with Ms. Lori Gillis.
I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum and our community members for joining us this evening. Thank you. I am a lifelong resident and a CMU graduate. I served on the Planning Commission during the update of our city's master plan, and I was involved in 2 citizens' referendums so the voters could decide an issue. I've been honored to serve as your city commissioner for the past 3 years. During my service, I have spearheaded these accomplishments. I opened access to the north side of the 80-acre Indian Pines Park and eliminated illegal activities there. I initiated security cameras on this boarding building. I helped initiate a policy for the city to fund sidewalk construction, amended the policy of 1 to 3% interest charged to the city on brownfield reimbursements and saved tens of thousands of dollars, and initiated free brush pickup in 2017 and 2018. I have worked diligently to improve our community and our city and would be honored to continue serving as your city commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Maddock?
Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and taking part in our democratic system. My name is Nicholas Maddai, and I am a lawyer, and I presently work for the courts up in Clare and Gladwin County as an administrator. I've had a number of amount of time of working as, with past experience working on boards and commissions, both here and in my former home of Bay City. And I have experience working with governments and small businesses. And I bring this experience to the table as a city commissioner. With this experience that I've brought, I was elected back in 2015 as a city commissioner, and then I was elected as vice mayor in 2018. And with my time on the commission, I've been an advocate for our neighborhoods, for fiscal responsibility, and for transparency. And with the questions that we'll go into more detail in a moment, many of these issues continue, and I would advocate for these issues in another term if I'm so elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perschbacher?
I'd like to thank everyone here tonight, along with the League of Women Voters, for this opportunity to address the residents of Mount Pleasant. I'm born and raised in Michigan. I was born on the west side of the state. I'm a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 5. I have received both my bachelor's in psychology and my master's in counseling from Central Michigan University. Currently, I'm a downtown property manager at 201 South University, the old post office. I'm also a mental health therapist at Ronan Psychological Associates, and recently was elected to the board of the Friends of the Broadway. I'm looking forward to bringing events to Mount Pleasant through the Broadway organization. The one thing that I feel is very important is that we remain a community, that we look at our diversity and our variety, we look at our education, our understanding of our resources that we have, and we continue to support those resources. Thank you.
Thank you. For our first question, Mr. Maddie will be the first person to speak. So expand on an issue of importance to you and list your priorities should you be elected.
My priorities when it comes to being elected, as I've indicated in my opening statement, continue to be working on behalf of our neighborhoods, trying to maintain a fiscally responsible city government with the budget that we have, that we enact every year, to work with Union Township to share services where it makes sense, and to continue to advocate for governmental transparency. In my term on the City Commission, working with Commissioner Gillis and the rest of the commissioners through the 3 years, there's been many successes, and I would thank Commissioner Gillis for addressing many of those issues that we've achieved in these past few years. Continuing to, in my next term, I would look to work on behalf of our neighborhoods, and to continue to do that, and to expand services where it makes sense. For example, we've recently provided for increased brush pickup service, and in many communities, I would also, compared to many communities, I'd also be interested in bringing about yard waste pickup. For example, that'd be something that I'd be interested in pursuing. I would also be interested in pursuing more of a relationship with Union Township. There is a number of big issues that are coming up that are widely discussed in the community, ranging from the community pool to our recreation programs and things like that. There are opportunities to pursue shared services and to economize costs across both units of government. So, overall, I'm going to look to continue the work that we've already been doing, and to work on behalf of our neighborhoods and for our balanced and fiscally responsible city budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Birschbacher?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Expand on an issue of importance to you and list your priorities should you be elected.
The things that are important to me really are the community and the residents that reside here. I am very interested in the fact that there are close to 200 students in our school district that are homeless, that 31% of children under the age of 18 in our Mount Pleasant area live in poverty. A lot of this has to do with the fact that though we have lots of jobs, you can always see that there are places out there looking for workers. They're not jobs that afford a family. And I'd love to bring in industry and business into Mount Pleasant that affords people the ability to have a paycheck that helps them be able to purchase a home, be able to send their children to university. Anytime that we allow this, anytime that we're able to put forth the effort to encourage businesses and opportunities in industry, the more we have individuals who reside in Mount Pleasant that take care of their community, that look forward to being part of the community. That's what's important to me, is the residents here and the communities that we create. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
Yes, thank you. My first priority is to build a community swimming pool. I think we've waited long enough for something to replace the historical swimming pool down in Island Park that got torn down in the 1990s. And that would also be my second priority. So I figure if I put two down, maybe we could get it done in the next coming 3 years. I also have the theory of limiting tax breaks to developers. I feel that when we give tax breaks to development, we divert revenue from not only our city, but Isabella County and all the other publicly funded entities, such as ICTC, Commission on Aging, Library, etc. So when we decide that we are going to give tax breaks, we are also taking the money from all those other entities and either giving it back to the developer or not collecting it from that development. And I really think that we all should pitch in to make sure that those things stay active and successful and serve the community. I'm also interested in increasing services to our residents. I have been able to find a way to keep brush pickup for the last 2 years, one by our own funding through our own budget, and then this year through a 2% grant that our Director of Public Works, John Zhang, submitted and we were awarded. So twice a year we get free brush pickup. I'm also interested in increasing owner-occupied housing. Our rental percentages are so much higher than our home occupation, about 68% rentals. So I'd like to make that a little bit lower and allow people to have home ownership and, of course, equity. And I would like to reopen pedestrian access to the south 20 acres of Indian Pines Park, and that's over by the airport. It has been off the radar and inaccessible for over 20 years.
Thank you. We'll begin with Ms. Perschbacher for the next question. How would you improve Mount Pleasant's energy efficiency, use of clean energy, and other sustainable practices?
Well, obviously, we have a lot of, in the area, we have a lot of wind turbines, which I think are very important. I think that they have been very useful in lowering cost of energy, reducing the usage of coal and such. I would like to see maybe incentives brought to new building where we would use some incentives to, using solar-powered panels on top of new buildings, like they have down at some of the buildings on Central Michigan University. And some of the buildings have green tops where they have actual grass and foliage growing on top of the buildings, which keeps the buildings cooler. Maybe when we have new building in town, we have this Mitsubishi, am I pronouncing it right? That is adding on. Maybe if we give them incentives to create more of a green building that they're adding on, instead of the basic brick and mortar, asking them to include something that reduces the energy that they use. In new home ownership or a new home building or apartments. I know we always have apartments going up, and I'd like to see maybe some incentives for them to increase their energy efficiency through that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
Can you please repeat the question?
Sure.
Thank you.
How would you improve Mount Pleasant's energy efficiency, use of clean energy, and other sustainable practices?
I think the number one way we could do that is through education and reaching out to our youth. They will be the ones that take on a lot of these problems that we're leaving them. And if we can guide them in the direction of how important it is for energy efficiency and some of the tools that we already know work, and just keep hammering it to them on how important it is to conserve, reuse, and and take care of our natural resources and our limited resources. As adults, we can see what's happening to our world, and there's evidence of that with weather change. We also can see what's happening even in our stormwater runoff, in the flood because of all the impervious surfaces from development that we didn't really take a lot of time looking at what that would happen. If a lot of rainwater came all down at one time, we experienced a flood. There's a lot of different ways that we can work with stormwater runoff by permeable surfaces or within a parking lot having an oasis that has a green area, trees, where that water would run into that oasis and feed those plants and trees rather than running off into our stormwater and then into our river. But I think all of us can be the role models to those youth, because if we practice what we preach, automatically we're bringing up children and other people around us to do the same thing.
Thank you. Mr. Maddow?
I think there are a couple of things that are at issue here, and I will, describe them broadly at first, and then, go into a more narrow point of view. First, regarding energy policy in the state, many of the matters as it relates to energy regulation, with the way how our laws and our regulations are set up, I would look to direction at this point from the state of Michigan and the Public Utilities Commission, to provide, direction, to have the broadest, impact for energy efficiency and clean energy usage. Really, that'll get the biggest bang for the buck, from the utilities, and also with the availability of incentives and things like that. But going to a little bit more localized, narrow point of view, we have certain opportunities and a certain lack of opportunities. For example, on the lack of opportunities, some communities have their own electric utility, and with that, they've had opportunities to pursue alternative energy development that they've developed on their own. And we don't have that available here. But what we could do is to pursue PACE programs. That's a program that permits, with the investment of sustainable development, there's a tax break available. The city can use land that it has available to lease to solar energy providers. And finally, I would like to emphasize that we are, with our zoning ordinance, we've emphasized mixed-use development and walkable, bikeable neighborhoods. That in and of itself is a sustainable use.
Thank you. We will start the next question with Ms. Gillis. Are you satisfied with rental housing within the city? Do you think there are enough units that satisfy the needs of young families and older adults?
I have always been an advocate for home ownership. I think when you are able to give a person to invest in a place, they're more likely to stay here, they're more likely to respect the community, and they're more likely to give back. We have, obviously, a lot of rentals, and the percentages are quite high. Some people think that that's normal because we're a college-based community. I don't believe that we need to get into manipulating rental housing aspects or opportunities. I think that if the need is there, because the need is there, money can be made, and developers would then invest in that. I also think that we should implement the program we had previously about conversions of rental units to homeowner occupied. The city has a fund where if someone were to take a rental and they changed it into a homeowner occupied, that they would give a percentage of the cost of the house to the person who's converting that, up to $10,000. I think that's a benefit for all of us here in the community. When you have people invest into parcels and property in the city, they will do more for us here, they will raise their kids here, they will invest in our community. So I believe that the rental housing unit is adequate at this time, and I believe that we should invest in homeowner occupied.
Thank you. Mr. Maddie?
Regarding the current, makeup of our rental housing options, I believe that improvements can be made, and the city is, working toward that end. The city, by way of the, with our new zoning ordinance, the zoning ordinance opens up the opportunity for new forms of development, new options for housing, on particular parcels, and with regard to mixed-use development. There's a greater opportunity for options, not just for, and I would extend that very broadly from students to, families that are starting out in our community to older adults. I believe that the door is open now for increased opportunities for more housing options, for them. The city is working or has worked to, increase the opportunities for other developers who may be interested in bringing about those opportunities. For example, we, with the work in bringing about the development about Parcel B, there's an opportunity there for more options for families that are starting off, and this is following up with the interest of with studies and community discussion regarding the missing middle and what we need to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Birschbacher?
Mount Pleasant is, we're a university town, right? We have a university right smack in the middle of us. But that doesn't mean that we have to be a rental town. Many cities across the nation that are similar to us, that have universities, not large universities, but mid-sized state universities, have a lower rental rate, a rental usage, and a higher home ownership than we do. I think that the rentals that we have here, some of them are superior. There are some great ones out there. Some of them are dorm-like, where you rent a room and you have shared living space. And yes, many of those are used for student housing, but there are other people that rent them who are not students, but they can't afford to rent someplace else. So they rent this space for $300, $400, $500, $600 for a small bedroom and some community area. I think that we need to look more at our home ownership, which is about 30%. Most cities that are similar to ours are 40% or above. I'd like to investigate even more into these options of making rental homes into owned homes by the renters, because I think that when you have individuals that own their space, they put more into their community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have a rebuttal, but not a rebuttal to one of them? Just another comment?
I don't believe that that's,
Okay.
it has to be a rebuttal to something that was said. Okay. For the next question, we will begin with Mr. Maddie. And the question is, concerts, family activities, new businesses are drawing people to the downtown area. What ideas do you have for attracting more businesses and more shoppers to Mount Pleasant's downtown?
I think this largely is twofold in terms of bringing people downtown, or more broadly bringing people to the city, or bringing businesses to the city. And I would want to address it in such a way that broadly, I think the first thing that we need to do is work to have a city with dependable services, dependable, or have costs and taxes that are understood, and something that is predictable. If everything is able to be maintained in such a way without any type of shock in terms of services or costs, we are more inviting as a community, and I believe that would bring in businesses, it would bring in residents, and with development that is, being proposed, with Parcel B, for example, that is, something that can be a catalyst for further interest, further development, further activity in our downtown. And with the, besides fiscal responsibility, having the services that we have and maintain are also important to make sure that, people can expect, continue to expect what they've already received. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Perschbacher?
I've always enjoyed the downtown area. I used to own a small performing arts studio downtown and utilized many of the events that happen downtown to promote my studio. I've noticed that there's been a little bit of a drop in events that happen downtown. I'd like to see it increased, definitely. But the one thing that people have brought to me about the downtown area that frustrates them the most, because they love downtown, they love coming down here, there's a lot of opportunities. But with the stores that we have downtown, with the salons and the restaurants, that includes employees. And these employees are not always able to find parking spots. Or if they do find parking spots, they have to run out every 2.5 to 3 hours to move their cars so they don't get a ticket. Many of them don't have the ability to do that. I'd like to see us really seriously look at the parking in the downtown area to provide not only for the people that want to come, the customers that are going to take care of the businesses downtown, but the employees that are trying to make a living. It's hard to make a living when you're paying a lot in parking tickets. So I'd like to see us look at the parking downtown. I think that would increase the ability for our businesses to grow down here and for individuals to come down and spend some time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
I love the town center, that open area right on Main Street and Broadway. And I would have loved to see an amphitheater there to bring people down, but they are putting one down to Island Park, so that's good. But I would like that parking lot utilized more on maybe Saturday and Sundays when there's not a lot of traffic downtown, with art in the park, maybe ice sculptures during the winter, so we're bringing people outside and downtown during the winter months, concerts, and things of this nature. I think visitors that come to Mount Pleasant, if we could get the information to them that there are war monuments down there, one down there by Fancher, and then the one at Town Center, and also the Vietnam Memorial that is in walking distance of downtown, and then incorporate our walking paths, so that if people are visitors from out of town, out of state, come here, they have monuments to see, they have historical buildings down there, and they could enjoy these places and then use our park system to relax and enjoy nature, which we are very lucky to have. So I think a linkage between the parks and the downtown and encouraging that for visitors would be a great thing. I also think businesses have to stay open after 5 o'clock. Many people work, so they cannot come down and frequent a business and patronize a business if they're working 8 to 5. And I also think diversity in businesses. We have some really unique places down there, such as the Painted Turtle, that is nowhere else in Mount Pleasant, so anybody that would want to take advantage of such a business, only place to go is downtown. We have more unique, diverse businesses, they'll come here.
Thank you. For the next question, Ms. Perschbacher will begin. What, if any, steps should the city take to support the efforts of local churches and businesses to provide services for Mount Pleasant's homeless population?
Well, my understanding is we now have a lot of the churches in the area that take individuals from November to the end of March, April, I believe, and bring them into the churches as for the homeless to sleep and to have a place where they're safe, where they can get a meal. I know this is coordinated with iRide and with the Soup Kitchen and many of the churches in the area. We also have the Care Store now that is helping individuals who are low income, and they can utilize that to buy non-perishable products that normally they can't get with some of their funding that they may have through DHHS. But I would like to see us put together something where we can work with families that are homeless, not just individuals, not just women, not just men, but families, units, because there are individuals that are out there that are couch surfing with their children, that are sleeping in their cars, that are trying to make ends meet wherever they can. And I think that the city should organize a task force with the churches and sit down and discuss what we can give to each other, what we can put on the table, and how we can help these individuals and these families. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
I'm really proud of our community that's taken the steps to address the homeless population in Mount Pleasant. Anyone that's been involved in any way, shape, or form should give themselves a pat on the back and a great big hand. The Strickland Nonprofit Center on High Street in Adams has finally come to a realization and given many services to our homeless population that were needed. So I applaud them and the people that made that happen. I also think as a community, we can give out or help with that by acknowledging that some of these people that don't have a home to live in and are going from couch to couch, like Amy said, is because we are not providing a living wage. We have to encourage employers to share the wealth and make sure that when somebody works 40 hours a week, they can have a home and a car and provide insurance to their families. I also think our mental health issue has some impact on the homeless. And so more mental health services for people that fall through the cracks or need a helping hand to get back up on their feet. We should take a part of that and make sure those services and monies get to those places. And I also think we all know kids and children in the school systems that have difficulty. They might not have a family. They might be taken care of by their grandparents and others. And look out for them. They might be in your neighborhood. They might be your grandchildren, friends. And just give them something, even if it's reading a book to them.
Thank you. Mr. Maddow?
Well, in the first instance, I would also echo a thanks of, to the businesses and the churches and the organizations that have, made efforts to address the homeless population. Their efforts are well recognized, and it addresses a vital need. There are a number of social service organizations that work, outside of the city government, ranging from, things from the, local efforts from the state of Michigan through the county government, through other private social service organizations. And, with the setup of our, system of government that we have, largely those services, those activities have been placed on those organizations. The services that the city provides, is more, I would say generally oriented in terms of our infrastructure, of our needs for our neighborhoods and things like that. But I don't mean to, completely, sidestep, the opportunities here. If there is something, in fact, that the city can work with, for example, working with, trying to achieve more affordable housing, I would look to opportunities to work with those community groups, to have a meeting to discuss all of our options that are possibly on the table to, for the city to take part in meeting this need. The city, has made some efforts of, working with affordable housing, for example, with Chase Run, providing for further development for that as well. So, some work has been done so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Gillis, we'll start with our next question. What is your opinion of sustainable cities?
I think all of us are aware of what we have to give and what we have to take to keep our city going. We have to start realizing that money doesn't grow on trees, and the buckets are limited. So when we're thinking about spending money here, we're taking it from somewhere else, and we're not being able to provide services or accommodating the needs in other areas. We can keep our budget and our millage the same as long as we understand every time we give a tax break or we do something in one area, we're depleting the funds from another area. Now, sustainability can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. When I think of sustainability, it's meaning keeping my millage low and being able to use our resources wisely and taking into account any energy that we expel. How can we reduce that? We can all do that within our homes. We can walk more often. We can recycle. We can turn down our temperature, our thermostats. We can make shopping trips once a week, and that will all reduce our carbon imprints. It will all reduce the monies that we're spending on those things. And as a city, in the city government, if we took all those measures, which I can say city staff is doing a wonderful job at trying to reduce everything that they can and are very budget savvy. So I think if we all do our part, we'll see the impact.
Thank you. Mr. Maddie?
And I am in support of the idea of sustainable cities. City governments throughout this country, at the behest of like newer generations of citizens, have taken, greater interest and greater concern for, the environment, for global warming, for, making sure that, products are recycled or reused in appropriate ways. And cities have made some great efforts, taking the lead perhaps even over and above state and federal governments, when opportunities arise. And so there are some model cities out there that have made some great efforts toward, becoming more sustainable. In this city, that has been my interest as well. Doing what we can, where we can to, work toward more environmental and sustainable, or environmentally friendly and sustainable activities. Toward the beginning of my term, the city was through the study of expanding recycling to rooming and boarding houses, and the study indicated that was a great success. It was a widely used service, and there was great interest in that, and we've continued that, through my time on the commission, and I would look for, further opportunities wherever and whenever we can to increase our sustainability as a city, either as a governmental organization itself or as individual members of the community.
Thank you. Ms. Perschbacher?
I truly believe that Mount Pleasant can be considered a sustainable community. One of the reasons why we should even think about pushing towards these efforts is the fact that we have this beautiful park system with this river that runs through that really sets us apart from a lot of other places. We need to look at how we are taking care of our park system, how we are taking care of the residents that live around that system. How do we become environmentally safe? How do we work towards making this city be able to care for itself and care for its residents and care for the nature and the culture and the diversity that we have here? Part of that could be putting together a coalition with researchers at CMU in their environmental studies, finding out what they feel we should do, what they feel we could utilize from them or from our fellow neighbors. How can we increase our recycling? How can we reduce some of our emissions? We're trying to become a more walkable and bikeable area How do we continue pushing that forward? I think that with sitting down and discussing these issues and listening to all viewpoints, we can come up with some great ways to continue being sustainable. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for 2 more questions and then our closing. So we'll begin the second to last question with Mr. Maddie. How will the ballot proposal of marijuana legalization affect current Mount Pleasant ordinances, and how do you feel about the proposal?
I have a twofold approach to the medical marijuana proposal. In the first broader instance of this point of view, I am in support of this marijuana proposal that's going to be on the ballot in November because and there's a number of legal, social issues surrounding the illegal use of marijuana that I think that given the markets that are possible, given the freedoms that are at stake, with the current system, this proposal is vital. From a more local perspective, though, this proposal, just like the Medical Marijuana Facilities Licensing Act, does permit a certain amount of local control, and just like my views on zoning in general, my views of medical marijuana or marijuana generally as it comes to the community, it needs to be, this is a brand new market, brand new actors in it, brand new financial system that needs to support it. We need to take this deliberately, plan our way out through this and, give ourselves an opportunity to review, how this will impact the community. I'm supportive of this generally, but we as a community need to use the tools that we have to protect ourselves from the possibilities of this brand new market. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Buschbacher?
Well, to begin this statement, I'm going to state that I do support Proposal 1. I support it for 2 reasons. The first one is that there are many, as a mental health therapist, I see a lot of kids on probation that come through that have to go through therapy because they have been found with an ounce or 2 of marijuana on them. Sometimes it's expunged from the record and sometimes it's not. And this person, this individual who has working towards their future may have just done something that will destroy their future. And I don't think that the use of cannabis is something that should destroy a future. The next thing I'm going to, one of the other things that I'm interested in is the use of hemp. Hemp is the stalk of the marijuana plant. Hemp can be used in a variety of different products. Having a hemp production increases employment in an area. It increases taxable businesses. It's something that will bring financing into Mount Pleasant. But as Nick mentioned, we can, as a city, decide where and when and how many we will have in the area, what kind of industries we'll have here that will be cannabis-based. We do want to make sure that we don't go too far to one side or too far to the other, but we find a good middle so that we can benefit from this, and also our residents can benefit. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
I also support Proposal 1. I believe there are advantages not only for the city and the state for tax revenue, that we might as well tax this product. I also believe it's a good opportunity to be able to reuse vacant buildings that retailers have moved out because people buy things on the internet, and we now might be able to get a new industry that would rehab that building. I served on the ad hoc committee for medical marijuana, and I think the same steps could be taken to make an ordinance for recreational marijuana. And it would be probably very similar as far as zoning, buffer zones, and probably limits. I also want you to know that when we were discussing medical marijuana at the ad hoc committee, there were several businessmen, prominent businessmen, citizens of the years, clergymen, therapists, 2 doctors that all came up to the podium to say the benefits, to talk about the benefits of medical marijuana for not only drug abuse, for opioid abuse, but PTSD for our veterans. I also have some concerns, just like Amy said, about students that may get busted with some marijuana and forever limit them to where they could go in life. Our federal government would now not even give them federal grants for student loans if they have that on their record. So I believe that's would be a good thing for us to expunge their records and also to free up law enforcement to focus on real crimes.
Thank you. And for our final question, we will again begin with Ms. Persbacher. Do you ever anticipate the city of Mount Pleasant and Union Township becoming one governing unit?
Okay. Now, I haven't been in Mount Pleasant very long, okay, but I know of the differences between Union thought and Mount Pleasant thought. To tell you the truth, I don't know if we should truly merge. I think that being separate entities has its strengths. I think that we should work together in every shape and form to not only create an environment to create an environment that is welcoming to businesses and to corporations to bring jobs into our area. I think that's very important. Isabella County in itself has a very high poverty and low income rate. So I think that Mount Pleasant should work with Union in every way possible, but I'm not really sure that there would ever be a merging. I'm not really sure that would happen, but I think that we can come to the table and we can work together on a lot of very, very important issues that will help not only Mount Pleasant residents, but the residents of Isabella County. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gillis?
I don't anticipate Union Township and the city merging. I think the zoning is different, number one. Also, the millage is wildly different from what we pay in millage here in the city and what Union Township residents pay. And I also believe our priorities are different. So I think for the city, we have our advantages here, and I think that we should promote those advantages. And we always work collaboratively with Union Township. And in the future, probably with a swimming pool and other very badly needed things to happen for our community, we will be working collaborative with Union Township. Water is one of those issues also. So I think they have their strengths and we have our strengths, and together, as unique as it is, I think it makes a better community. So I really think, and we also then have more representatives. We don't have to combine our representation and have lesser people representing both populations. So there is advantages to keeping these separate and also working together for the whole of the donut. We consider Union Township the outside donut and we're the whole. And I think that has worked so far for as many years as I've been alive, so I'm not, but I think that is something that is really probably not the best way to go.
Mr. Maddox?
I think the frank answer would be I don't anticipate that. There's a number of practical or legal reasons that would limit the ability of a city in a charter township from officially merging together. But nevertheless, those, on the one hand, while laws may limit those opportunities, there's a number of other laws that permit a great degree of working together. in various forms between two units of government. And I would, just like to quickly highlight some of those activities that we've pursued. Historically, the city has, shared, fire protection services between itself and Union Township. Indian Pines Park, part of the development and opening of that included, coverage of, because it's in Union Township, coverage of, code enforcement on their end, to cover, park property. We pursued development that was mutually beneficial by way of, Act 425 agreements where land is conditionally transferred between the units of government. We share services where it makes sense. We have our recreation programs, and currently, we're studying our water systems where we have excess capacity and they have water quality issues. And if we'll find out, hopefully by the fall, what our options are, that'll be mutually beneficial. So I would look to continue all of those activities in whatever forms they may take in the future. But the most vital thing is to maintain the positive relationship we have now, which by most estimates is the best relationship that we've had between the two units of government, for a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now go to our closing statements, and we do need to stick to our timelines, so when time is up, because we do need to wrap up. So we will begin with Ms. Perschbacher.
Again, I'd like to thank everyone who came tonight, along with the League of Women Voters, for hosting this opportunity to speak to the residents of Mount Pleasant. I understand the need of creating neighborhoods that support affordable and acceptable single-family units, as well as communities that support relevant multifamily housing, as we have in Mount Pleasant. But I understand the importance of viewing all sides of the story. As a mental health professional, I know that when I am with an individual, I know that what I'm hearing from them is not the whole story. So I am always interested in hearing everything that happens and everyone's perception of it. But I would like to state that I am for sustainable communities. I think that we can move towards a sustainable community that will push for positive change without limiting our understanding of our culture, our diversity, our natural resources in Mount Pleasant. Thank you.
Mr. Maddox?
Well, first, thank you everyone for coming out tonight and participating. When I came before you as a candidate back in 2015, I had a number of issues that remain, my issues as they are today. To fight for our neighborhoods and for our services, and to be fiscally responsible, to maintain those services and to, fight for transparency, on behalf of you, the public, our families and our taxpayers. I want to make sure that everyone knows, whenever they can or need to, what the activities of government are. And in my 3 years of service, there's been a record of achievement with this commission where we've worked to expand recycling, to increase the use of bike lanes. We've maintained our millage rate and had balanced budgets. Our meetings are online and on TV in their entirety, and I would look to continue with those achievements, continue working on those issues for you, the public. Thank you.
Ms. Gillis?
I want to share some of my future goals as your city commissioner if I were re-elected. To build a community swimming pool, to increase services to the residents, such as the free brush pickup, sidewalk snow removal, and more frequent street cleanings. I want to increase owner-occupied housing. I would like the regional center development to benefit all of our local residents and to establish more neighborhood associations. I have established access to the north side of Indian Pines Park, and I would like to reopen pedestrian access to the south 20 acres. I'm an advocate for neighborhoods and parks, and our Chippewa River should be protected for generations to utilize and enjoy. And I also believe in giving our youth opportunities to be active, passionate, and involved in rewarding activities. It's what makes Mount Pleasant a great place to raise a family. I'm asking for your vote so we together can continue to make significant changes in our local government for the betterment of the people of Mount Pleasant. I again thank the League and the community members here for your time and consideration and your support of the democratic process. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeLu, Mr. Routinen, and Mr. Tolis were not able to be with us tonight, but I would like to thank these candidates for sharing their views with us this evening. Thank you also to Teresa Turner for arranging the forum, the City Hall staff, MAC TV Channel 187 for recording the forum, and the members of the audience for providing excellent questions. For further information on all candidates running for City Commission, see vote411.org, and please remember to vote on November 6th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. To help you be a more informed voter, the League of Women Voters is hosting a series of educational programs between now and October 18th. The schedules are available on the back table. Remember, democracy is not a spectator sport, and that concludes our first forum for tonight, and thank you for coming. And we'll begin the second forum shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm going to go over the ground rules with everybody for a second. Okay.
Oh, jeepers. Okay.
I know, it's great.
I'm the president of our local league.
I'm
Thank
Courtney.
you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, my husband insisted that he come.
I left them all at home. They were not allowed to come.
How old is he? He's a month old. He's sitting in a good location that if he needs to just
exit
quickly
really
kind of
quickly,
exit.
yeah.
think he did that on purpose.
Good evening. I'd like to ask everyone to please take your seats so we can begin our second forum of the evening. Good evening and welcome to the Candidate Forum featuring candidates for the Mount Pleasant Public Schools Board of Education. This forum is sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the Mount Pleasant area. I am Ruth Helwig, a member of the League and impartial moderator. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan organization whose purpose is to promote informed and active participation in government. The League never supports nor opposes candidates or political parties. Our goal this evening is to acquaint you with the candidates for the Mount Pleasant Public School Board of Education. The Board of Education represents the community in setting policy for the school district. The board consists of 7 members. There are 2 6-year term seats to be filled for this election. There is also 1 4-year term seat to be filled. The race for the 4-year term seat is uncontested. So 4 of the 6 candidates running for the 6-year term are here tonight. 2 of the candidates were unable to attend. In a moment, the candidates that are here will introduce themselves, give a 1-minute opening statement, and answer questions. We ask that you write your questions on 3x5 cards provided, and please signal a League member when your question is ready so that someone can pick it up. Questions should be brief and to the point, and will be screened by League members to avoid duplication and to assure relevance. I'd like to remind you that we are here to address the issues. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to each question, and candidates are allowed 1 45-second rebuttal if the opponent responds first. The candidates will also have 1 minute for a closing statement. Our timers will signal when the candidate's time is up. We will begin the opening statements in alphabetical order with Ms. Bond.
Thank you. My name is Amy Bond. I moved to Mount Pleasant about 20 years ago. I attended Central Michigan University, and I majored in family studies and early childhood education. I've worked in careers such as an at-risk parapro in charter schools. I've also been a daycare director for 5 years, and I currently now work at Central Michigan University in the early childhood education department as a field placement coordinator, creating relationships with daycares and other human service organizations. I am also a mom of 3 children who all attend Mount Pleasant Public Schools, and I've been married to my husband Jeremy for 15 years.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Damian Fisher. I am a local attorney. Right now, I am the prosecutor for the tribe. And I am the father of 4 children. I'm an empty nester, so they're all gone to college, and they're not looking back to see where Dad is. I'm a Navy veteran. I've also been a substitute teacher at the middle school and high school level. When my kids were in school, I was a varsity wrestling coach, softball coach, and football coach. So I was very active, involved in my kids' lives, and that informs a lot of what experience I have to bring to this job. That and, it's just a strong sense of public service. So thank you.
Ms. Pangle?
Good evening. Thank you to the League of Women's Voters for organizing this event tonight. I feel strongly about supporting our community, and I think I can do that best on our school board. I am a mom of 2 daughters who are attending our public school system in Mount Pleasant. I volunteer weekly to supplement the life science curriculum in their classrooms. But after attending our board meetings regularly, I feel that I probably would have a greater impact there. I also, I think, would complement our current board well. I'm strong in sciences. I'm a CMU biology faculty. I teach our pre-service teachers as well as lead teachers workshops, and so I feel like I know our Michigan standards well. I look forward to you hearing your questions this evening and sharing my views further. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Courtney Stegman. I have lived here in Mount Pleasant since I came to CMU. I studied recreational therapy, and then I went back and got a degree in applied behavior analysis. I am currently employed at Community Mental Health, and I am their behavior analyst. I recently have headed up an autism ABA clinic in Rosebush, and we are partnering with the Creche Isabella ISD. And I look forward to learning some more things about the board and look forward to answering any questions that you have. And also, the very cute baby here in the back is mine, and he is a month old. My husband just pointed to him, so thanks.
Thank you. We'll begin with Mr. Fisher for our first question. Sorry, I seem to be losing my voice here a little bit. Do you think local school records should, sorry. All right, I'm going to come back to this one. I'm going to reread it. How have you prepared to be a school board member?
Oh, good question. Well, I would say my former service on the board of the Okemos School District down in near Lansing. That was very helpful. It was elected office. They're a very innovative and creative school district. That's certainly part of my experience with preparing me for this. Also, I've been on the Tribal Education Advisory Board for many years, and that's the tribe, of course, runs its academy out there, which is a preschool, a language immersion school, and a K through 6 program. I've also been on the Tribal College Board of Regents, so a higher education experience. And what that does for me is gives me that base of experience in getting things done in a bureaucratic environment and building consensus among other board members, being able to speak with staff, administration, and again, as my experience as a sub and as a coach, I get what teachers need on a daily basis and the support and all that they do. As a parent, I understand what parents are willing to do and what they do every day, and that they just need a little bit of help with their kids. They need to be informed to make decisions. That and, just my passion for public service, that's what I do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pengel?
Well, I feel that when starting to think about it, being on a school board, having a good idea of what it meant was important to me. And attending school board meetings is probably the biggest thing I've done over the last year, to actually have a good reality of what it meant and whether I could see myself in that position and bringing something to the board, complementing the members that are currently there so that the board can run efficiently. I feel that I would complement that board well. The experience I have as a parent with kids in our Mount Pleasant public school system is one that gives you one side. As a professor, I also feel that I see where some of our students may want to be and the kind of standards that we need to reach a university degree. The reality too of being a researcher, I think helps me in preparing to be on the board, dealing with research budgets and making sure to stay fiscally sound are things that I think have prepared me to be on that board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
I believe that the experience that I have currently in my job with community mental health as a behavior analyst, that gives me some insight outside of the classroom, but I work pretty closely with all of the teachers in all the 6 counties that we serve, Isabella County being one of them. And I also have worked with children for over 12 years now in several different positions. When I was at CMU, I was a substitute teacher, and then I moved to a special education assistant at Fancher Elementary. I then was an ABA technician at a place in Okemos, and then I came to community mental health. So I also have some family background, and I've been around education my entire life. My mom has been a teacher since I can remember, and now she's a school counselor. My dad was a teacher, has played every administrative role, and currently is a superintendent. My father-in-law was the board president at Shepherd for a very long time, and my mother-in-law currently is the Wynn Elementary principal and the special ed director at Shepherd. So I feel that that gives me a lot of insight on different positions within education to prepare me for the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I believe that my current position at Central as the field placement coordinator allows me to outreach with a lot of community organizations and agencies that work with children as well as the public school system. I also have a close relationship with the Center for Clinical Experiences, where CMU students are doing their volunteer and student teaching. I also believe that it's very important to be active in the community, and so I have watched a lot of the videos that the board has already had and has posted, and I also believe that it's important to get to know the community members as well as the schools and what the schools need.
Thank you. We'll begin our next question with Ms. Pangle. Do you think local school boards should advocate for legislation that affects the safety of the district's students and teachers?
I think the safety of our students is probably one of the most important things, and I believe strongly that our school should be a safe and welcoming environment for all. I think there's a number of measures that we can put in place to ensure this, and I actually think our current board is putting a lot of these in place and has already. We have some measures that have taken place just over the summer. All of the entrances to our schools, all our school buildings have been replaced with newer technology, things like this. I also believe that prevention is really critical, and I think that communicating with each other, talking to each other, and with our local police officers, we have a position for officers right now that works with schools almost exclusively as a preventive measure, and I think those are the people we need to sit down with and talk about to see what do we need to do to make sure that we are doing all we can. And so, when I sat down with this member of our community, hearing, for instance, the positions have been reduced over the last few years due to budgets. There used to be quite a few more positions for prevention, something that I would probably want to see and seek opportunities to see, can we increase them back up as preventive measures is where I would want to spend some of my efforts. Thank you.
Ms. Stegman?
I do believe that we should advocate for legislation to keep our kids safe. I also agree that their safety and the staff safety is their number one priority. I think that we also need to look at having things in place before something were to happen that would be unsafe in our classrooms. I personally have close ties to the local law enforcement with my in-laws' family company here, and I think that knowing what's out there and what's available is important to know ahead of time and bring to the board.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I think it's important that the current school board advocate for the different safety measures. I think that it's important for everyone who attends school, works in a school, to make sure that when they are there that they feel that it is a safe environment. I think from a parent standpoint, parents would have a very hard time sending their children to a facility that they didn't feel that they could trust, where the children were being taken care of in an appropriate way. And I think that last fall, with the situation that happened, that allowed for the school to really demonstrate, the different schools to really demonstrate that they do have a handle on what to do. I think that was a nerve-wracking day for everyone, and I was really impressed with the way that the public school system handled that.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Yes, safety takes on many different forms. To create a safe environment for our kids is what we want to achieve at the schools, to provide them academic safety, physical safety, emotional safety, where learning can take place and where they can feel safe to share their ideas and share who they want to become. And so advocate for that. Yes, advocating takes on many different forms. What I prefer to do is to lead. And by that I mean, let's have confidence, move forward with programs that keep our kids safe. We all have ideas about what needs to be done. Getting them all to the table is important. And in that way, it's not necessarily a trip to Lansing or a big press release that we think this legislature or somebody should come help us fix it. It's how are we doing our best, because we know best about our kids and our teachers and our staffs. And so let's give ourselves the confidence and the freedom to do that. And I think that's how you advocate for a safe school environment, is when you have the confidence to do what you know is right, because you know your kids and you know the people that you're with. And communication is key. Knowing what the person next to you is going to do, knowing what they're capable of, that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Stegman. How do you think science should be taught in the Mount Pleasant Public Schools?
That's a tough question for me. I believe that there are curriculums in the state of Michigan, and there's criteria that each subject matter needs to follow. I know that with the core curriculum, the teachers are given goals that each student need to reach, and they're given the opportunity to create their own lesson plans on how to teach those specific goals. Science was never one of my fortes, so I think that encouraging students to learn outside of just the textbook and allowing students to really experience science specifically is important. And not every kid learns exactly the same, and I think that's an extremely strong point with the core curriculum, and a lot of teachers will encourage each different learner in their class to learn the way that's necessary for them, and I think that science is one that needs to be taught that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I would agree with everything that was just said. I think that hands-on learning is really key. Children learn in all different fashions, and a lot of children learn by doing rather than just reading or seeing. And to give a child an opportunity to be able to do some type of science experiment and to learn about it in a very hands-on manner, I think that that is an ideal way. I think that the teachers who have the educational background know really how to benefit each child in the classroom by taking the idea or the scope of what needs to be taught and creating a way for them to learn that material.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Yes, every time I think about science, I think of the old Thomas Dolby song. She blinded me with science, and the crazy old man goes, "Science!" And it should be fun. Science should be fun. Science should be accessible. It's not necessarily about STEM, technology and engineering and all that kind of stuff, although that is the language of science. Science is best made relevant when it's accessible and when it makes sense to people and to the kids. And that's how science should be taught in our schools. There's easy methodology to follow. I mean, you have exposure and exploration and experience. I mean, there's ways to make it fun, and I think that's what science should be for kids as they move along. They will enjoy that, and they will become our leaders in future and our scientists, and everything that we need out of them to support us as we grow old, they will be there. And if they're having fun, then I think that's the way it should be taught. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pangle?
I think science is pretty critical to our curriculum. The new science standards that have been put in place in Michigan over the last couple of years, in Michigan, Mount Pleasant adopted them last year, are all really emphasizing an increase in inquiry. And so kind of what has been said right now, that hands-on aspect is really critical for the kids to be able to go past the textbook learning. Now what we need to do is support our teachers so that can happen in the classroom. And so the curriculums are great, and the teachers are learning that curriculum currently, but allowing them to have the support they need, whether it's workshops, and so every year I lead exactly this, teacher workshops. We do this right now in Beaver Island, which is a lot of fun, where we actually teach them as teachers, how do you handle an inquiry-based classroom? How do you make this happen so that the kids can have a fun experience that's positive and show them that science is accessible? And then we have CMU in the middle of our community, and of course, as a CMU researcher, I'm going to advocate for greater community involvement, where we can have a partnership between CMU and all the amazing research that's happening, whether it's STEM or outside of STEM, with our public school systems, to have this meaningful interaction between community and our public school system. So.
Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Bond. How would you improve the school district's energy efficiency, use of clean energy, and other sustainable practices?
That would be a difficult question for me to answer. I think that There are certainly things that we could do better. We do look at certain buildings as they are older, and of course that comes with some challenges. I think that if we look at what needs to be done within each school, we could make some recommendations to update some of the systems to make sure that we are doing those things. I think it's also important to make little changes wherever we can. And so in doing so, speaking with the children about just some of the benefits of turning off lights when they need to, and things that they could be doing in the building. I know we speak a lot of what kids can be doing at home, but I think if we can talk about what they could be doing in the classroom as well, that could take some steps to doing some things that already are possible.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I like that question because it starts off as kind of a green question. I mean, how can we be sustainable? And that's good, but also remember that going green is good business. And when you talk about sustainability in this context, the way the question was framed, it's how do we reduce our expenses? Look, energy costs is when you're running buildings and buying gas for buses, you've got a high energy expense. So you find ways to increase productivity and reduce expenses, become more efficient. And in some respects, you use the business applications. Look, if I'm maintaining a dozen buildings, I'm going to negotiate with Consumers Power on an electric rate or on a gas usage rate. We've got bargaining power as a school district, I think. That, and we can partner with other, with the city, with the township, to achieve that balance and mix. So I like that question because it opens the door to a lot more practical solutions. And when you go down that pathway, then you can bring more people to the table, like the people who have ideas, who see the waste, who see the opportunities, listen to the people who are doing the work, and they have the best ideas to achieve those efficiencies. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Pangle?
I think it's important to realize that as a culture, we are going toward more sustainability, and being able to be role models to our children about this, I think is something that is dear to my heart. They learn about these things in their curriculum, in their classrooms, and being able to model that, I think, is really good. But we also have to remember that we have to stay fiscally sound, and we have a limited budget that we have to kind of adhere to. And so I think when things need to get renovated, when we need to start looking at changing the structures, that's really when, to me, that sustainability comes in. And again, I think that we have great precedents in our current board with what they've been doing. So over the summer, a lot of renovations and some discussions were happening, seeing the board as a bargaining chip and being able to make these negotiations to have something as green as possible. There's a lot of initiatives currently in our classrooms for recycling, with the kids kind of empowering this and, kind of putting it together, deciding how they're going to run this. And I think as a board supporting these initiatives, whether we do it with, there's many ways to support this, whether it's at the school system, at the district level, just kind of, again, modeling this and encouraging what's happening currently.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
I think that, the school district is currently trying to find ways to become more efficient. They've made several updates to different school buildings. I think that it's important, though, for us to remember our budget throughout the school years, and I believe that looking at the cost to benefit ratio, what is costing more, what are we using more of, those types of things, and how can we cut back on those or improve those with it making sense and fitting into our budget. I think, to the previous point, that recycling is extremely important, and even back to the previous question of science, I think that teaching those kids, all of our students, certain things about sustainable energy and efficiency and how to promote as green of a planet as we possibly can is covered not only in science, but also in everyday classrooms, and I think that we should continue that practice.
Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Mr. Fisher. With fewer college students choosing to go into teaching, what steps can our local school board take to assure that quality teachers will choose to teach in Mount Pleasant?
Well, the quality of life in Mount Pleasant is the first feature for any teacher. That is what we would feature. Now, And from a board perspective, I mean, you got to create policies and through funding, encourage teachers feeling supported and that they're encouraged and nurtured to be creative. And I think any young teacher, and it's funny that you say, because I know many college graduates right now who are getting into teaching, and maybe it's people I associate with, but they are excited. There's a generation coming up that feel empowered because they get it, and they feel that they're on the cusp of change, and they are. And for an old guy like me, I've learned that you either coach that up or step out of the way and let that happen. It's a good thing, and that's the attitude I'd bring on the board to encourage young teachers to come on, and that they will be supported, they will be encouraged, and that their innovativeness and the diversity that they bring here will be recognized and nurtured. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pengel?
I think having a retention of good teachers is really critical. And as a school district, we're actually doing really well. It's really exciting to see how long we're keeping our teachers, our high-quality teachers in the district. And what also I find very exciting is that we have a lot of Mount Pleasant alumni. And so students that were in our public school system that have then gone on to get a degree and then come back to teach here. And I think it shows the quality of our district and how much we care. And I think it's really true. Supporting them in any ways we can, and for them to know that the board is behind them, I think is really important. Making sure that they are supported, whether it's for professional development or in the negotiations of their contracts, that we are there. And again, I think a partnership with CMU. I mean, CMU is a great school of education, and there are a lot of partnerships that encourage our high-quality students in the program, and that then go straight into the classroom, get to volunteer and participate either as part of their load or just as pre-service teachers. And for them to see this and really prepare them for the reality of what the job is, I think is really important, and we should continue to encourage it in any ways we can.
Thank you. Ms. Stigman?
Unfortunately, throughout Michigan, there's a shortage in people who want to go into education, specifically into teaching. Like I said, that I come from a family of educators, so I know this hardship pretty well. And my family has all graduated from CMU, so I know the College of Education that we have here is fantastic. I've had several friends who wanted to be teachers, who their parents were also teachers, and their parents discouraged them. And I think that just stems from not having enough support in each classroom. I think that as a board, we can provide each teacher full support, and I think that is one of our most important roles. I believe that we have CMU to tap into, and I think it would be an awesome opportunity to expose our children to what there is at CMU, if we could have observations or them to know what exactly it would look like as they went in to follow that education path. I also think that if we could encourage our teachers to enjoy their jobs and provide them with the opportunity to truly enjoy their jobs, that would encourage students then to want to pursue that career path.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I think that word of mouth is one of the best representations when it comes to bringing in teachers. If we have existing teachers who are excited to go to work every day, and they're talking about that with their friends and their colleagues and other teachers in other areas, and pre-professionals and emerging teachers, and teachers who maybe aren't happy in other areas, if those people are able to say, I really love to come to work or I love to come to work every day, other people want to have fun too. They want to be invited to the party. So I think when people are enjoying what they want, then other people are going to follow, and that's a great way to get high-quality teachers. I also agree that I think Mount Pleasant needs to be a place where people want to live, and there are a lot of really great avenues for people to live here and enjoy all the activities that Central Michigan has to offer. It's a great location in that it's not too overly populated, but it does offer a lot of great things that many rural areas don't. I think in addition to that, when people are looking for teaching opportunities, we need to be able to say that you're already here if you're at Central or if you're at one of the other neighboring colleges, and that you can have an opportunity to stay and grow in this district.
Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Pengel. Are you aware of the adult education program? What are your thoughts on it? And if you make school board, will you support it?
Yeah, I think I'm a little aware. I'm sure I have lots to learn on our adult education program. I would highly support it. I think it's important that we're all learners throughout our lives, whether as kids or as adults. I'm not sure what's currently in place, what we can do, but I think it's something that's important that we remain learners. Yeah, no, I'd have to check and actually figure out what exactly is in place. What is the program? What are, what's in place currently, and how can we support it better?
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
I am not extremely familiar with the adult education program. However, my experience with special needs specifically, in autism even more specifically, I do believe that there's an extreme importance with having continuing education as people enter adulthood. I too would have to look more into it, but as of right now, my limited knowledge, I would support it if I were on the board. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I would follow kind of the same thought process. I don't have a lot of background in the adult education program, but I would definitely support anything that supports students of any age obtaining a degree and being able to learn. I think that it's really important that we have students at any point in their life, if someone has not earned a diploma and they want to come back, or if there's somebody in the special ed program who would continue their education, I think that's always something to be encouraged and would definitely support that.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I think this is a great question because it opens the door to so many other things. Adult education is just a piece of, it swings the door wide open to the value a robust school district is to a community. Okay, we're talking adult education, community education, parks, recreation, partnering with Parks and Recreation, after-school programs, even daycare programs as pre-K, as Head Start, functions of the school districts. That's great. Personally, I know the value of adult education because the Navy made me go back and get my high school diploma. I had to go through adult education because I was a high school dropout. Never went back my senior year. But they made me get my high school diploma, and then, went through college, the whole law school thing, and, that happened. But yes, there's great value to an adult education program, again, because it opens the door to just the kind of value, again, that a robust school district can create in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin the next question with Ms. Stegman. What is your position on instituting a later start time for the high school based on increasing research suggesting this would benefit performance, health, and safety?
I think that if the research is there and that it does truly reflect that there's an improvement on all of those things, that is extremely important. I don't know off the top of my head the current start time of the high school. I know that the middle school starts significantly early and ends pretty early as well, compared to the elementary schools. But I think that as a research-based profession that I'm in, I think that having research there and evidence that truly suggests that we should consider all of our options to better each student.
Thank you. Ms. Boyd, Bond, sorry.
I think about my own daughter, who's currently an 8th grader, and I know for her, getting up in the morning, getting her out the door can prove to be definitely a challenge. She very rarely wants to get up and get to school early. With that being said, I think there is a lot of research that shows a later start time can be very beneficial. I think Mount Pleasant Public Schools went to great lengths to kind of even up the start times a little bit, most recently with getting more busing, and then this way that the middle school and high school do not have to be on the same busing schedule or trade off with the elementary school. I think that was great gains into getting more of a universal start time. I think that the start times have been considered. I think the changes that went into this year, or last year and this year's start times were definitely considered. I think that we could continue to take that research even farther, and I think that depending on what the community needs, along with what our children need, is a great way to think about those things.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. This is another great question because I can tell you from my time on the Okemos School Board and the Tribal Education Advisory Board that the dirty little secret is start times are a function of the bus schedules and the efficiencies that you strive to find with those. So really it comes down to making a policy choice whether you're going to make student-centered decisions for the curriculum, for everything that you do. Are you going to be student-centered, or are you going to be Mr. Bean Counter, let's do things as affordably as possible? I think it's a choice, and I think that choice starts with the school board. And I can tell you right now, for my part, I'm student-centered. If the research shows that there's better learning for a high school mind, it starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, we have to consider it. But it won't. But you have to start there. Make that decision. Are we going to be student-centered, or are we just going to do the least restrictive alternative or the least expensive one? Are we going to take the lowest bid? I think it's a policy choice, and I think it starts with the leadership on the board. And for my part, I'll be student-centered. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pengel?
I would highly support a later start time. I think there's very good evidence showing that both from a safety and from a knowledge retention and effectiveness of learning, our teenagers' brains just work differently and do much better with a slightly later. And we're not talking 2:30. Some of the school districts that have adopted these policies have start time at 8:30. Having them drive at 7:15 in the morning when they are just in a fume and they're sleepy is not safe. And if we do care about safety, I think that's one of the things we actually need to consider. And I fully agree. I think it is a busing issue. But again, as a board, that I think is our priority, making sure our students stay safe and that the learning can happen in the best conditions possible. And the data are there. And so I do think it's something where we can actually start to put focus groups in place. How can we make it happen? How can we fix the bus schedule so it does align with what is best for our students, and so they stay safe and can actually learn in good conditions? I don't think I could learn math at 7:15 in the morning.
Thank you. We'll begin our next question with Ms. Bond. If it becomes legal, would you favor Mount Pleasant teachers carry a handgun in their classroom?
My own personal choice with that would say no. The reasoning behind that being that I think that there would need to be a lot of education for both the staff and the students that I don't know if we would want to put our resources in. We've talked a lot about limited resources in Mount Pleasant, and I think that as a parent's perspective, I would potentially feel very nervous about my child being in a building with guns in that context. That being said, I do understand that our top priority is keeping children safe, and I think that as a school board, we would need to continue to have those discussions, especially with the schools, of ways that we can keep everyone safe that would also make families in the district, the children in the district, feel that they were heard and that the school was doing the right thing for the children.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I got to tell you, this question, it's a litmus test, and I don't like it. But I'll tell you this, as a tribal prosecutor who works with law enforcement every day, I'm not going to give up on the competency of our law enforcement to keep our schools safe and to keep them safe zones. Let teachers teach. Let law enforcement keep our schools safe. I have every confidence in them. I know because I work with them every day. That's the answer here. It'd be nice to have, if everybody had a gun, well, maybe we'd all have a gun. If we all didn't have a gun, we probably would be just as safe. Hey, look, that's a litmus test question. So let's go with what we know and go with the people we train to be trained and trust them and let everybody do their job. And as a policy, I think that's important atmosphere to create, to know that teachers are supported in being professional teachers, not in part-time law enforcement, and that law enforcement have a presence at the school, relationships at the school. Look, I deal every day with the truancy and the troubles that come out of misspent youth in our schools, and kids that are acting out on trauma that's entirely unrelated to their school experience, but manifests itself in school. So is putting a gun in that environment helpful? Some would say yes. I'd have to say no. And again, not because I'm against guns, but because I have confidence in law enforcement to keep our schools safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pengel?
I feel the same way. I think that I would not choose to put guns in the hands of our teachers. I do think that a conversation with our teachers is important. What would they feel they need to keep their classrooms as safe as possible? And I do think that a separation of teaching, and they're trained in teaching compared to law enforcement officers, which are trained in keeping everybody safe, that separation I think is important to keep. I would also increase communication with our police officers around, and especially the ones that are dealing with our schools, to make sure that they have the resources they need instead of talking to the teachers about arming them. I would have that conversation with our law enforcement. I think there's lots of other ways around keeping our students safe, and I think prevention is really key. Safety measures that we're putting in place to make sure our school buildings remain safe, I believe, is where I would want to go in terms of policies and from a school board position.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
Continuing down the line, I also do not think that guns belong in a teacher's hand in his or her classroom. I think that there are a lot of other proactive and preventative practices that we can put into place in each classroom and throughout each school. I believe that being, on the board's side, that it's our responsibility to look at what truly is going to keep our kids safe, and I think that starts before the gun gets placed in the teacher's hands. We have preventative measures already with every locked door. You have to get buzzed in. There are a lot of things before the fact. I also think that there's an important aspect with our school counselors, that they play a part in looking for warning signs and keeping all of the kids safe and healthy from a mental perspective as well as a physical safety perspective. So, thanks.
Thank you. I want to say our candidates have done an excellent job of staying within their timelines, and we've been able to cover a lot of questions. We are not going to be able to get through all of your questions, but we definitely will. So this will be the last one, and we will start with Mr. Fisher. Given that textbooks are written to satisfy the curriculums of large states such as Texas and California, how do we ensure our teaching materials reflect the values of our community?
Well, the first response comes to one size does not fit all. And a book written for the masses may or may not be applicable, but again, we empower our teachers, we empower our administrators, we give them the tools to make decisions, and then the resources that are, we don't have to buy textbooks from California. There are online resources that we can choose that fit our needs, and again, and then too, it's an expense issue, budget issue, it's an accessibility issue. It's also about what platform do our students learn best on. I know many students perform better in an online atmosphere, or segments of their education to be online or electronic. It all goes back to less about a textbook anymore and more about the teachers connecting with the students and using whatever means available to make that connection and to strengthen the learning that occurs. And it's not just in a textbook, it's in all the resources we provide for our teachers. And that, again, means as a board making sure that the teachers' voices are heard, the parents' voices are heard, the students' voices are heard, and that the administration has the tools and are empowered to make those choices to support that learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pengel?
I think textbooks are important. They have a place. But I also think we have to trust our teachers and trust and usually our teachers are the ones that put task force together and then recommend what text they would see as best supporting the learning that happens. They're trained, and usually these decisions are made as a group where they look at a whole panel of options available to them. And so, trusting that they're doing a good job, and as a school board supervising that, checking, that the information that's in there is as current as we can, and then making sure that we then have, offer the follow-up support so that, yes, there's a textbook, but there's also everything else in place, because indeed textbook is not all, and you can have a great textbook, but then if the learning behind doesn't happen because the means are not there, or it doesn't quite align with our Michigan standards, that's not ideal. And so I think, yes, textbooks, but also everything else that follows.
Thank you. Ms. Stegman?
I believe that textbooks do encourage some learners to learn. I also believe that there are ways outside of a textbook to learn. There are a lot of different resources, and I know that most of our teachers, if not all of them, are familiar with a lot of outside resources. I think that there is a huge expense with textbooks, and the outdated aspect of a lot of textbooks, from when I was in school, I think that hinders learning sometimes. So I think it's important as a board for us to encourage our teachers to communicate with us what they need and what each student needs, as well as what each student's parents feel that they should be learning. I think that having the core curriculum the way that we do, and the way that teachers are encouraged to pinpoint how each learner learns and to really cater to that with each lesson is important. So I think that textbooks, they do serve a purpose, but it's not the only answer.
Thank you. Ms. Bond?
I would agree that I think that our children have a tendency to learn better, especially looking at specific ages through hands-on experiences. I think that this community offers a lot of great outreach that would allow for students to learn. I do understand that there's benchmarks and things that each child is responsible for knowing by the end of a certain year. And I think what better way to have them learn that is to look at the way that they can take those skills that they need to know and how they would apply to their life and their future. And in doing so, I think that some of that can come from a book, but I also think that there are a lot of resources online. I think there are a lot of things right around here that haven't even been tapped into yet. And in doing so, I think we would potentially free up some of the money that is currently being put into purchasing textbooks that students are only able to use for a finite amount of time before they need to be updated or repurchased.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with our closing statements. We will go in reverse alphabetical order, so we'll start with Ms. Stegman.
I would like to thank everybody who's here tonight for being here and for all of your great questions. Also for the Women's League, I think that this is great. I'm a first timer and I didn't know what to expect, and I really think this is important for our community. As a board member, I truly believe that student success is our #1 goal, and providing support from us down to administration, down to teachers, down to students is extremely important. I believe that having community integration is also important, and I would push for some of that as well. So thank you all.
Thank you. Ms. Pengel?
Thank you for coming tonight and for the League of Women's Voters for hosting this event. I was excited to be able to hear your questions and share a little bit of my views on these topics. I think our public school system should first and foremost be a safe and welcoming environment for all our students, And as a board member, I'd be looking for ways to strengthen our arts, but also our science, but also our arts programs, which we didn't get to talk about too much today. I would encourage meaningful community involvement, and I would want to support our teachers while staying fiscally sound, which is our responsibility as board. I would like to ask for your vote on November 6th, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters as well. These are wonderful forums, and without them, we'd all be less informed. Running for school board is pretty tough. It's local. It's local politics at its most local level. But having said that, though, there's nothing more rewarding because we get to neighbor helping neighbor, and we're talking about kids. Now, for me, as a member of the tribe, I feel I have over 500 kids in the Mount Pleasant School District. So I feel a connection to every one of them and have a burning desire to make sure that they have an opportunity to learn in a safe environment and make it so that their first desire upon graduation is not to leave, but to find a way to come back. And I think when you dare to dream about a school district that has a wraparound function in the community, I think that's your first best step towards doing that. And that's what I would bring to the vision I'd bring to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Bond?
Again, thank you for everyone coming out tonight, and thank you as well to the League for having this event. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for voters to be able to see where each of us stand on different topics. I think that the board, the school board as a whole really is a wonderful liaison to setting forth what the state is requiring for us to do and gives us the how in which to do that. So I think the school board in Mount Pleasant has already done some really wonderful things. I think that being a part of it is something that I have thought about for quite some time. I really like the idea of having a partnership with the families in the community, the schools themselves, making sure the teachers have something that they enjoy showing up to work every day and really being there for the children of the Mount Pleasant community.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the candidates for sharing their views with us this evening. Thank you also to Teresa Turner for arranging the forum, the City Hall staff, MAC3 TV, Channel 187 for recording the forum, and the members of the audience for providing many excellent questions. I'm sorry we were not able, with our time constraints, to get to all of them. For further information, see vote411.org, and please remember to vote on November 6th. The polls are open from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. To help you be a more informed voter, the League of Women Voters is hosting a series of educational programs between now and October 18th, and schedules are available on the table in the back of the room. That concludes our forums for this evening, and good night.